Now, our next guest, incredible, came to Ireland from Somalia when she was just 3 years old. She is now Ireland's only female car showroom owner, and her car videos on TikTok have over 7 million likes.
I absolutely love them. Please welcome motor dealer and content creator Nadia Adan. Hello, Nadia. It is lovely to have you. I always see you coming up, like when I'm scrolling Instagram, and it's incredible. You're funny, but I didn't realise your backstory, which is genuinely harrowing. Yourself and your mum, you fled the war in Somalia when you were just 3 years old.
Yeah, we did indeed. And I think when I initially went on social media, that's not how I portrayed myself initially. It was like cars, sexy, you know, you want to sell cars and Lamborghinis, Bentleys. But then, yeah, that's how my journey began in Ireland. So we left just after the war in the early 90s. And it wasn't like we just got to Ireland. It was a long journey of traffickers. And we went through Sudan, Ethiopia, up through the Sahara Desert into Libya. We were in jail for a certain amount of time. We were in refugee camps. And yeah, we made the journey over and ended up on O'Connell Street in the mid-90s. And I remember when we landed, it was just the two of us. We were homeless. We went to the Justice Department to ask for asylum. And the Irish people were so amazing. They welcomed us. My mum even tells me a story of somebody gave her £100 on the street, because back then it was pounds. And they just weren't used to seeing, you know, foreign people coming in, and immigration was what, you know, it was very little back then. So we asked for asylum. We got put into direct provision, which was the equivalent of it back then.
Yeah.
The process was so much quicker than it is now. It was maybe 6 months, 6 to 9 months, and Mum could get her papers. We could get out there. She could start working. I could start integrating. You get the accent, get into school, and yeah, just start living my life, my new life in Ireland.
Your mum sounds an incredible woman as well. You were only 3 years of age.
Yeah.
You've gone through an awful lot there in a very... do you have any memories of that? How difficult, say, was that journey?
Yeah, I suppose part of me has no memories at all. And somebody told me a long time ago, it was because it was so traumatic, it's probably repressed somewhere. But the other side of it is I always felt the protection of my mum. Always. Like, I never felt like there was anything wrong, because she always had my hand. And I remember one particular night, we were walking with like 50 people, and we were walking at night time, and we got into a shack, and there was a bed, and they let me and my mum sleep in the bed because she was with a little child. So in one way, I do remember some core memories from that time, but then on the other side of it, I did really feel the protection from my mum. And a lot of people back then, when they were fleeing countries, they would leave the kids and they would go find a life and then bring the kids over. But she wasn't leaving me behind. You know, she was like, I wasn't leaving you in case something happened to you, and, you know, if somebody didn't look after you or whatever. So she just, you know, took me with her.
Because, of course, there's that story where people were found in a truck at the port 2 days ago in Ireland. Your perspective on this situation is completely different from anything that we can feel.
Yeah.
And like that, it's just you and your mum.
Yeah.
Your family's gone.
Yeah.
Because of the war.
Yeah.
With that perspective, and you obviously having repressed so much because of that journey, what is your view on Ireland now? Because it is completely different to when you arrived.
Yeah. Obviously, I really see both sides, and I don't want to be a hypocrite, because Ireland let me in, gave me all the opportunity, gave me my education, gave me a chance now to have my own business, employ people, pay taxes, contribute to the economy, to the life it gave me and my mother. And we love Ireland so much, and people have welcomed us so much. But I also do see the other side, that it's a different time now. When we came in, there was very little immigration going on, so that process could happen a little quicker. And I really think the decision makers, you know, kind of need to just work on that a little bit, work on that process a little bit, and decide quicker, you know, are they staying or are they going? And just make that decision, because I know some people are in direct provision for years, and that's not good for the immigrant, and it's not good for our country, you know, because people, you want to get in and also integrate, and it just makes that harder, you know. And so I really do see both sides, and I'm so, you know, empathetic to both sides.
Yeah.
What was it like for you then, growing up? 3, 4 years of age, having to join school. I don't know, what was your English like at that stage?
Yeah.
Kids can be mean as well. Was it difficult, or were you embraced?
I think I got the usual teasing of, like, kids will tease you about anything being different. So because I was foreign, I did get the, listen, will you go back to where you're from? But then I also got, you're fat and you wear glasses. So I just think at that age, they're going to pick at whatever is different about you, you know, and it's not necessarily coming from a really bad place. But personally, my experience hasn't been that bad. It really hasn't. Like growing up, yeah, I got the little bit of teasing, but as I grew up, because I had the accent, because I was in school, I could integrate. I had my friends. I grew up in Fir House. So my mum was working a lot. She worked a couple of jobs. I didn't see her from one week to the other because she really was working so hard. So I really like had a close group of friends and they became my family, you know. So I think I just integrated myself and, you know, I just like was open to everyone.
You are, like, you just meet you. And my God, no wonder you went into, because you're like, Harriet, how's it going? It's like, you know everything that's going on all the time. Because let's talk about going from, because were you stockbroken at one stage?
Yeah, I was. In a previous life.
You were stockbroken?
I was,
which is a hard enough life.
It's a hard enough life, yeah.
And then how do you end up being Ireland's only, like, female, like, car dealer doing your thing?
Thanks to TikTok.
What happened?
Viral videos.
But did this start while you were a stockbroker?
Yeah, kind of. So Mum, my whole life really pushed me through to education, and because we had nothing and we had to start from nothing, the one thing she drilled into my head was an education. So even though I wasn't the best academic student, I never got really straight A's, I always coasted, I had to get tutors, I had to repeat exams, I had to do all that. She pushed me right through my postgrad in Trinity. So I did my degree and then she made me go to Trinity. She literally dragged me up the steps and was like, you're going to Trinity. I was like, I really just want to go and work. But she knew that if I tasted money, like I wouldn't go to school because I was just loved to go out and graft and I always had a job and that. So when I finished my post-grad, I got a job as an analyst for a couple of years and then I went into stockbroking because I wanted something a bit more sales. I was a people person. I just felt like the financy side just didn't suit my personality, but because my mum had really pushed me down this road, I just felt like I was pigeonholed. So I was in a really good corporate job. I was on great money. I was working with all these traders. Everyone was on big money. Everyone loved cars. They were all into their cars. So I got my first loan. I got my first car, which was a '08 BMW 320 diesel M Sport white coupe in the manual. And I know that's a mouthful, but that was the stuff back in '08. Like that was just like you made.
Look at your eyes. You just went. I knew.
I was like, oh, I've made it here now with my loan, you know.
But then you sold it.
And then I sold it. And as we say in the motor trade, I made a twist. I made a profit. And I did it again. I drove the car for a while and I did it again. And then just before the pandemic hit, I couldn't believe it. It was January 2020. I said, look, I'm going to take a risk. I took a lease out on this little yard in Wicklow, in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't even on the motorway. It was in an industrial estate. And I started off with a couple of cars. You know, not Lamborghinis and Bentleys that I'm selling now, but literally 2-3 grand cars. And that's when the pandemic happened and lockdown happened and everybody turned to their phones and TikTok. And that's when I really started pushing to social media.
So yes, I can't imagine the devastation. You've taken this loan out, you've got this yard full of cars. Where do we go? We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So did you put a video up online of an exhaust?
Yeah.
And it blew up?
It went mental. Everyone was like, oh my God, what is she doing? So yeah, I started doing videos of the cars because first of all, no one knew I was there. It was lockdown. So it was really just to let people know like, hi, I'm here. I'm selling cars in Wicklow. Come visit my little yard.
Come, hello.
Yeah, come, hello. And, you know, it was a time where everybody was on TikTok. So, you know, that was a bit of luck as well. And I suppose I grew up with social media. So I was a little bit more familiar with getting on it. Yeah, and I think that helped me. So then one day I decided to do a TikTok. I'd put a lot of money into this car and I said, oh my God, how am I going to sell it? Because you need a good brand and a good reputation behind you to sell sports cars. So you can't just rock out and sell them.
Here, come on, look at you. I'm sorry now.
Maybe now.
Videos are amazing.
Back then I was struggling. And like we've spent loads of money on the video production. We've traveled, we've done loads of stuff. But at the very beginning, I went onto TikTok and I kind of wore like a low cut top, a little bit sexy. You know, it's cars, it's a girl, you know,
you're leaning into the stereotype of what a woman does with sexy cars.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you know what? Car brands did this in the 80s and the 90s. And it's because someone's doing it for themselves. People sort of were like, what are you doing? So the video got 2 million views and I actually sold the car, the R8, from that video. It was an 80 grand car. And that's when the penny dropped for me. Like, hang on a second. This is a free tool. This is a way to get out to all my customers. I'm not paying for ads. I'm not doing this. You just have to be creative and you just have to be different.
And that is certainly a thing because when I first saw you, it was when you were getting stick essentially for being a woman who had the audacity to know about an engine in a car.
Yeah.
And you were like, you just seem so tired being like, yeah, lads, it's an engine,
Yeah.
it's easy to find out about.
Yeah.
You do come up with a lot of stick because you are a woman in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's how you use that as well. So if you just block and delete and run away from that type of stuff, but I lean into it. I come back with witty responses and clever videos, and then they go viral again because people are like, yeah, like she's right. Like, do you know
What does
what
it
is
take?
the big
But
deal?
what does it take to do that? Because I've spoken to people about this, and you have gone through so much actual bad things in your life. That does this just feel like someone just taking like ripping you apart in social media? Or are you like whatever?
At the beginning, it really upset me. It did. It did get to me at the beginning because I didn't have hindsight, I suppose, behind me and all the good things that happened, like selling all the cars, and I've just bought a new premises, and I didn't have all that. So I was just starting out, and I was getting all this backlash, and I was like, hang on a second, what am I doing here? Should I just stop? Am I doing this wrong? But I just kept pushing, and every time somebody would say something bad about me, I would just keep going and kept going, and eventually you just push through that, and you find a way to turn a negative into a positive outcome, and I'm shocked, like I'm sitting here talking to you, to be honest with you, but I'll keep going.
You're doing
rolling.
a bloody good job of it as well. Fair play to you.
How's your mum?
She's great. Mum is good. She had a couple of health issues a couple of years ago, but she's
good.
She's good, yeah.
She's going to be selling cars.
Well, you know what? She really was when I left my job, and she was like, I can't believe after everything I've done for you, I put you through Trinity. I really disappointed her, but now I think she's coming around.
I'd say she is. I know you've launched a new 2025 calendar for men's mental health as well, which is something very close to your heart, which is amazing for you. I know you raised a huge amount of money last year on that. If you had one car that you could have nowadays that you never sold, or you did sell and you wish you didn't, what would you pick?
Oh, I sold a Bentley Bentayga a couple of years ago, and I remember at the time I just did not have the money to keep it. Like, I really didn't. I probably don't now, but I would have loved to have kept that. I just think
Bentley Bentayga. I don't even know what that is.
I was just sitting there going, I know he doesn't know what that is because I don't know what it is. But is he going to pretend to know what it is?
Oh, yeah,
listen,
I got one of those
you
too.
need to get one. I'll hook you up.
Okay, we're going to get on TikTok and get that sorted as well. Check you out on Ashford Motors on social media or at official Nadia _Adan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, an amazing story.
Great chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.